Welcome to Keeping Up with Data. Keeping Up with Data is the podcast that keeps data enthusiasts up to speed with what is happening in the data world. We bring in the leading minds from the data industry to talk all things career, news, embarrassing stories, failures and successes. So something really important for us here at Precision Sourcing is mental health. It's something we've been focused on a lot over the last year or so, and we're lucky enough to have partnered with the Black Dog Institute. And we're going to be doing a lot of events with them this year. A lot of our events, money will be going towards them. And they're out there aiming to create a mentally healthier world for everyone. So if you wish to support the cause, please donate via the link in the bio on this podcast, and you'll be seeing a lot more information about Black Dog over the next year. So welcome once again to a very special episode of Keeping Up with Data with myself, Joel Robinstein.
Me, Emily Noda.
And today we are joined by Marek Rucinski. And Marek, as always, we'll get you to introduce yourself, so we're not telling you who you are.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Pleasure to be here in person for a change. After 2 years absence, right? So look, guys, my name is Marek Rucinski. I work for ATO for the last 4 years. So I'm responsible for all the data analytics capabilities for ATO, and also with broader responsibilities across the government. I sit on various things and committees, as you do when you're part of the government. And prior to ATO, over 18, 19 years in consulting, mostly with Accenture, bit with KPMG, all in data and analytics and strategy and marketing and all those things, So I've seen things evolve.
You've seen things,
I've seen things, It's be like a Blade Runner scene.
Exactly. Well, that's
no tears in the rain, please.
That's why we're so excited to have you on, Marek, because you are obviously someone who knows a lot about the industry, knows a lot about the data space. We can talk about the difference between consulting and obviously now working within government and how that's changed. We've got Emily asking people on the streets again questions, but we'll dive straight into it today, and we'll get you to think back, if that's all right, Marek, to the start.
Yep.
Where it all began. Yeah. Okay. Good. So obviously you mentioned this. So 25 years ago, you get into the data industry. Like, how did it all start from you? Was it data from day one, or did you meander towards it early in your career?
There was no really data industry 25 years ago. Let's be brutal about that. I've actually started in marketing. I liked the marketing sort of ethos, which blended creativity with some strategy. And when I was doing my undergrad, it was very much, either you're a creative marketer or you're an operational marketer. I sort of liked the more sort of strategic marketing. So I was like, okay, I was really confused. And I also liked marketing as a science, right? So marketing actually has a lot of data in it, in the context of understanding customer behavior, doing market research and sort of stuff. And there's a lot of statistics and data there. And at the time, I think that was relatively undercooked. So I really wanted to involve myself in marketing as a more of a strategic function with the organization, and also as a function that was not just about the brand and not just about brand management or comms. It was actually something that could involve hard data and fact-based decisions to give it credibility in the organizations. I think at the time, 25 years ago, marketing was very much a lightweight discipline, except in companies like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Coke, which are very much marketing-centric companies.
Sure, that makes sense.
And in others, it was just like, brand people, or advertising people.
Exactly, different world.
Ponytails,
Do you know what? I think this is something that you've said before, Emily. Some of the most successful people we see in the data industry are people who started in marketing, because you come from a storytelling, consumer-focused background. Would you say that that's always stuck with you and helped you?
Definitely, because you have to be sort of customer-centric, And I think some of the marketing companies were the first ones to really embrace data at the center of their operations. So when you think about retailers, then when you think about some of the pure plays that really spread it up after the first .com boom bust era, all those companies were data driven and marketing driven, very customer facing. So for them, using data to engage with the customer was their shtick, was the reason why they were successful, was really the center of their differentiation vis-a-vis the competitors. Yeah. So I think it was really exciting to see that to emerge in the market, because that was new. Yeah. That was new. Yeah. Because they were really distancing themselves, and the competitors didn't know what to do because they did not know how to counter-react, because they did not have the skills. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And so when did you pivot to a more data-centric role, shall we say?
Yeah, I think that evolved during my consulting era. Yeah. God, make myself sound old. I am old. Prehistoric.
You're not that old, Marek. Come on.
It was really just, I sort of started doing the consulting very much in the strategic marketing space. Then I really started looking at retail and consumer sector, because that was my history. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then progressively was more and more data. Yeah. More and more projects that really use data as the real differentiator to what we did with the clients. Yeah. And as a real lever to deliver value. Yeah. And then it just sort of, really, it created its own sort of little momentum.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so consulting back then versus now, consultancies are often first movers.
Yep.
I'm sure they were some of the first movers into the data world as well. But what's massively changed between now and then for you?
Yes, I think there's in summary, I think it's just a sheer sense of belief in the space, in the potential it has to impact the P&L, the balance sheet, and the customer and the client base of the clients. And I think there is a project that sticks in my mind. Yeah, as I think, as we discussed before, it's been a long time ago. Yeah. And we're working with Hutchinson Whampoa in Hong Kong, with their supermarket division, Park and Shop. And my client partner, my boss there, was very convincing and actually allowed them to actually give us their data. And we basically said, look, we're going to use your data from your cash registers. Yeah. Give us like 24 months worth of data from your cash registers. And we're going to do fantastic things with it. Yeah. Change your world. Yeah. But the basic premise was that we're going to use their patterns of sales from the cash registers, which is, at SKU level for each of the transactions, to understand the baskets, to understand what people buy, how they buy, where they buy, pretty basic stuff right now. Yeah. And we're going to use it to do two things for them. Number one, we're going to allow them to cluster the stores, to say, okay, these stores are shopped similarly. And then within each cluster, we're going to say, well, how much space you should give to each category based on how people shop that store. Yeah. So very much, fact-based stuff. Yeah. Bit of black magic on the side in regards to mathematics and statistics, but we're able to do that. But the cool thing was, right, for me at least as a consultant, is, the client actually gave us a store to play with, right? Because they didn't believe the maths. Yeah. Sure. They said, just a bunch of numbers. Yeah. Consultants show me graphs and curves and, it's like, that's not real. So they said, okay, but, we've got, so we chose these two stores, and as you know, Hong Kong is very densely populated. Yeah. So we found these two stores that were literally in the same suburb. They were very similar and actually a couple of blocks away. So we knew they were shopped the same. We knew they were very, very, very much, alike. And we did a classic physical A/B analysis, right? So we actually stripped the store. They rebuilt the store for me like I told them. Oh, wow. To actually relay the whole store, give exactly how much space to each of the categories. So you had your whole neck on the line here. Yeah. and then we did a 3-month pilot, right? Of how this store performs versus that store, and what is the impact on the actual net profit, right? Sure. Because grocers are very much bottom line focused. Yeah. So we ran it for 3 months, and the store showed, I think, between 10 to 15% increase in net profit. Wow. For a supermarket chain. Yeah, for only 3 months as well. And that's huge. That's huge, right? So it was really ramping up. Yeah. So that created a sense of belief. Of course. Yeah. But there was something that brought me down. Yeah. Because then then the project was, actually got a bit of, reverb, and was
Sure.
actually quite famous because we could, we saw this, it was very real. And I was coming back to Australia for my holidays, right? The guys here in Accenture said, look, Marek, good project. We'll get you in front of Woolworths, right? And you can present the case study, right? And show them what it's all about. So they did. They arranged the presentation. The guys Woolworths were there, 20 years ago. And I showed them the charts. I showed them the photos of the store, right? To say, look, this is real, not just made up crap by a consultant.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, Marek, that's interesting, but our store managers know better.
Oh no. Well, that must have been.
That was pre-Quantium, by the way.
Yeah, pre-Quantium. Yeah, 100%.
Now they know better, I think, themselves.
I think they do. Yeah. Well, the amount of money they've invested in it now.
But they lost. The sad thing for me was they lost 5 years.
Okay. Exactly.
This was 5 years before they even started thinking about Quantium, before they started thinking about loyalty, before they started really using data to drive the promotions. They're doing fantastic things now. But for me, it really struck me how conservative the market here is, yeah? How much they look to others to follow, but very rarely they are prepared to lead, yeah? And for me, that was actually quite disappointing. Because we do ourselves a disfavor as a country,
100%. Well, I can imagine the first 5 years of all this world was just people saying we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
We're making money.
We're making money. Our people know better.
Exactly.
But at the point, especially when you think about a supermarket, right? When you're running hundreds of stores, human mind cannot comprehend the patterns. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, but it's beyond our brains.
Yeah, 100%.
We can remember 7 things, right? Beyond that, no more, right? So.
And do you know what? I'd love to dig into the consulting world a bit more. I'm going to come to you first, Em, because I have for the 12 years that I've been here, seen the consulting industry change a lot. And you were there, Marek, for a lot of the 2 a.m. nights, 3 a.m. nights, all that. But I saw, Emily, maybe more so around the time you joined us 4 years ago, consultancies started having to change their ways of working in terms of flexibility, in terms of hours, because they are a great place to build a career because you learn so many different things. Like, have you seen that as well, Em, like in terms of like what the consultancies have done to competing in?
Definitely. I think that it's and more prevalent now, obviously, because we've had COVID for 2 years and everyone needs to work flexibly, and also no one really wants to be in consulting anymore unless they know that they've got that work-life balance, and they will join for the variety and stuff. But it's a lot harder to convince, I suppose, if you didn't have that competing with industry or client or whatever.
Yeah. How did you find it, Marek, managing and hiring? Because for some people,
you
consulting. Yeah, well, yeah, it's true. I did do it for you. But we'll go even broader than that. But it's always, there's a certain type of person that just clicks with consulting straight away. Yeah. And then obviously it hasn't necessarily always clicked with what people consider to be the general population of the data world because of the style of work. How did you have to, I guess, manage against that? How did you change things over the years to
I think that's true, and it continues to be a challenge in my current role as well. Yeah, because I think for me, the way that I treat my team right now is like an internal consulting company, basically. Yeah, to be honest, right? There's 800 people, so it's big enough,
Yeah, you'd think you'd have enough of them.
In the core consulting world, I think you need to start looking at really developing specializations, right? I think there's always a challenge in consulting world. Okay, you need to be able to be client facing.
Sure.
Yeah, you need to be able to communicate, storytell, convince, think on your feet, be in the room and react in the room, right? I think those skills are always precious, yeah? Especially when you combine those skills with some level of technical know-how in analytics, right? Because that really lends you a lot of credibility with the client, because you can not only communicate, but you can react, and you can evolve your argument live, with some level of technical backup and content, So having those people, and hiring those people, or hiring people with the potential to develop in that space, is always a priority. But that is not to say that, for me, analytics is a team sport, and you need different specialists. And, there is room for, what I call backroom people.
Yeah, of course.
Because they like the backroom.
And you need people to execute.
And that's what they excel in. That's their comfort zone. And that's where they feel they can be pushed pushed mentally, and I respect that, and we accommodated those guys, and gals, in the consulting world. The key challenge for those guys is, there's a philosophical question: is there a ceiling for them in regards to their career?
Sure, and that's the problem where you come up against a lot.
Is there a ceiling? Like, will they be promoted to partner level? Yeah, and to be brutally honest, it's very hard. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's very hard unless the organization is large enough to really support those expert career paths. Yeah,
Sure.
And some of them are evolving in that space.
Yeah, they're getting there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Where they protect, where they hothouse, and where they evolve that talent. Yeah,
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, at a certain point, you need to start bringing the numbers, and that's hard for those guys
Very
sometimes.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, the challenging aspects of recruiting into consultancies, I think there's two areas we always struggle with the most. One is what is known as the manager level.
Yeah.
Which is kind of that 140 to 160, 170 kind of salary, which in the market would be, a mid-level data engineer or nudging on a senior engineer. Yeah. But they're now starting to be expected to manage a project team, deal with the client directly, and that's where that ceiling starts becoming a little bit more.
Yeah, because
obvious.
for some of those guys, that's not what they like to do. It's not just not their comfort zone. It's just they're not interested in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It just doesn't really bother them. Yeah, they want to sit in front of the screen. They want to be challenged intellectually through hard, mathematical or coding problems, right? And really, that's what really talks to them. Yeah, in a way. And and I have deep respect for those guys. Yeah, a lot of those guys are actually on the spectrum as well. Yeah. So, and we are very supportive of that. Like in the current, we've got a whole community where we really cherish and protect those skills, because some of those individuals are just absolutely brilliant, right? But very narrowly focused.
In one area.
And that takes skill to, number one, recognize, and then number two, protect and evolve. Yeah, because they're very fragile as well. Yeah. So it does require different type of skills. It's harder in the consulting space, I find.
I can imagine it would be.
Yeah, because it's much more ruthless.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it is. It's much more.
Up or out, right? Up or out, right?
You understand why. Why. One more question on consulting world before we move on to kind of the now and the ATO.
Yeah.
We're in a boom market. In boom markets, often what we see is the small to mid independent consultancies doing really well, and then they start getting bought out by all the big ones, which we're seeing happen now in Telefy, Deloitte, Cloud 10 with CyberCX recently. Like, how do you find that, I guess, works for the market? Because we lose a little bit of that individualism from the consultancies. They get eaten up by the Deloittes and do you see that as a problem or a good thing, or maybe both?
I think it's just
it is just a thing,
just a part of life, right? I think it's an evolutionary cycle, right? It's natural selection. It's very Darwinian, right? But that's what it is, right? It's very much exemplar of that. I think it's good for the guys that get bought out, because some of them want to move up to larger plays, and they're probably hitting the ceiling in regards to what they can do in the current construct that they've created. Yeah, so it gives them a leg up to the next level of implementations, programs, and so forth. Yeah, it gives them financial rewards as well. So I think there is that angle as well, and it broadens the talent pool for the larger players, right? So and from what I've seen, it also brings in new skills sometimes, right? That are potentially, when not there, we're on the periphery, and suddenly they just can be clicked in. The process of clicking in is actually tricky, because sometimes, as you guys will know, there are cultural clashes. Moving from a small team to a large behemoth has its challenges, and some people do not click with the larger construct, right? Some people feel that they are just a cog in the machine.
Exactly.
They lose their identity, and therefore don't last.
I have a friend like that. It's quite funny, actually. He worked for a small independent agency, like a digital agency, and he was saying, I'm never going to have to bow down to the corporate overlord, and I'm in my own, kind of cool agency space. We all know each other, all this and that. 2 years later, they got bought by KPMG. And so
is he still with him?
Yeah, he's still there.
He's adjusted.
Well, yeah, he decided to get on the corporate train and go back on his word. So but it's just it is quite funny to see that. Right, so then now ATO. So I've got so many questions about this, and some we didn't prep you for. So sorry, Marek. This often happens.
No pressure.
Emily, first of all, though, so you've obviously done some recruiting for Marek at the ATO, and I think you spoke to hundreds of candidates about it, and they were all interested. Why? What is it about working somewhere like the ATO that interests data people from a recruiter's perspective?
Yeah, tell me, Emily.
Yeah, and then we'll kind of get into it with you, Marek.
I think it's threefold. So firstly, Marek, you're a person that everyone wants to work for. It's like a common theme. They know of you or they've seen you. Yeah, literally, It's true. There's like a big draw card. Secondly is the scale. Like you've already mentioned 800 people. Like that's huge. And it's very hard to match. Like we saw that when we were recruiting, right? We're like, a lot of people didn't have the scale.
Yeah.
So that's the second thing. And the third thing is like you're giving back to people in Australia directly in some way. So
technically
that is
taking away being the tax office.
Well,
Give and take.
yeah. And
There's
within
a
reason.
function there, guys.
So yeah, it's like those three things for me. I'm like, well, why would you not?
No, that makes sense.
Okay,
and that leads me really well into my next question, which you're probably going to hate, Marek. Why you? Right? And I know it's quite existential, but people do talk highly of you. You've also landed a role that would be coveted by many other people in your position or your level.
Yeah.
It is a great role. So what is it about you that makes you that kind of leader that has been able to get into a role like that?
How can I answer the question myself?
I know, it's a terrible question to answer.
You should be answering that question.
I know, right? Yeah.
Maybe rephrase, what would other people say about you?
Or what would other people need to do to follow in your footsteps? How about that?
How about that?
Yeah.
Look, I think... I don't know. Like, I think I'll throw it back to you, Emily, as well. To be honest, but I will go out on a limb. I think there is an element of evangelism, to what I do, and I hate that word, but it fits the purpose of this conversation. I do try to create a sense of belief and purpose around data and analytics for an organization. I firmly believe it is an engine for growth. It's an engine for differentiation. It's an engine for efficiency as well for organizations. And also in companies like ATO, it's an engine for risk minimization and avoidance as well, right? There is also a protection aspect of analytics. And I think for me, being able to create that message and promote that message with the business to create different energy and a demand pool for our services, I think was a bit of a game changer on how the team was perceived. Because when I arrived, my mission was from the commissioner, Marek, industrialize this thing, right? And it was true. They had lots of people doing, as I said to you guys, doing fantastic things, but very artisanal, right? Yeah. People crafting beautiful models in the back room in the corner, facing the wall, right? And then shyly giving them to the business, saying, "Hey, try this." It's like, that's cool, right? But it's not going to change the world, right? It's gonna have a sort of a more of a creep effect, yeah. So I think what I try to do is, number one, just demystify the space. I say, look, it's not magical; it's actually process. Once you make it mechanical, you can pull it apart, reassemble it, change it, and so, because like cogs, wheels, and all that stuff, right? And I think, and to show and educate our guys, but also the business, right? Both sides need to know how the mechanism works. And I think the ability to do that probably was a bit different to what they were used before, right? Because people were very fuzzy in regards to really understanding at an operational level how analytics operational system works. Yeah. And I think maybe that's where, because I've been around for a while, I was able to bring a level of clarity and purpose to the mission. Yeah. And therefore explain to everyone, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is how you play together. Explain to the business, say, look, here's what we can do for you guys, here's the types of conversations that we need to have, and by the way, I need so much money because I need to make it better. And but there was a payback, right? And I think when COVID hit, we were ready. We were ready to respond. We were ready to build. We were ready to to do stuff that I don't think we would have done if things were not different. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you mentioned COVID quickly there. You said you were already ready for COVID, which is great.
Well, no one was ready for COVID. But
No, but
you know I'm going.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I don't think you want to be ready for something like that.
No. Well, actually, I think maybe we do. Maybe that's the thing.
Now you do.
That's what government's there for, is to be ready for things that we can't handle ourselves.
Yeah.
So how do you think it's helped change a lot of the government agencies, COVID? Because we all talk about the positives that have come from COVID. I'm sure that it's helped digitalize and push it forward slightly, at the very least.
Yeah, look, I think the digitization space obviously has accelerated, and that's axiomatic. Everybody knows that, right? I think the really positive thing that happened, and there's a clear parable, right? So if you think back about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a national health record initiative here in Australia. So that raised a lot of questions in regards to the community license and the community sense of belief in regards to government using data to actually support, community outcomes. I think the initiatives that the government put in place and we were able to implement during COVID showed the other side of that equation. Yeah, showed the fact that, okay, there is actually positive aspects to bring data together, to actually pulling it into a mechanism that will respond to the community needs quickly and precisely. Yeah. And I think for me, that was a watershed for the government and a watershed for the community. And I think, the market research shows that the trust levels have gone up, but, the trust levels can erode very quickly as well, right? It's a very fickle function, as we know. But there is definitely an upswing. I think the government understands how valuable some of those data sets are to actually help them make very real decisions, right? Like the single touch payroll data set that we have, which collects data from all businesses in regards to the payroll, that allowed us and the Treasury and ABS to understand how the economy is going with a 2-week lag time. Yeah. So not many other countries in the world had that. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And I literally spoke to guys from MIT 2 weeks ago. When I told them the story, they're actually freaking out. Right?
Really?
Yeah. Well, because usually, it takes governments about at least a quarter, if not 2, to process all the economic data and then figure out, yes, are we in recession or not 3 months ago?
Yeah, okay, yeah. Which is far too late.
It's far too late, right? Whereas we could tell, okay, well, based on the payroll movements, which we can cut whichever way we want, because it's data, we were able to tell the Victorian government, well, here are the, the suburbs or the industries or the businesses that we're seeing being affected. Yeah. And therefore it allowed both the federal guys and the state guys much more precise response. Yeah. Sure. And I think for me, that was quite a quantum leap in regards to the quality of service and the quality of response that the government is doing. Quite unique globally, I think. Yeah,
that's exciting to hear.
Yeah, and really, really, it just makes the money work harder. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Like you're moving from a shotgun treatment to much more precise, targeted approach. Yeah, I'm very unfortunate imagery there, but but you know where I'm going with that, right?
I do, yeah, I do. You know what? That's really cool stuff, and that's the kind of stuff that would be lovely for us as Joe Public to know more. Because all we hear about in the media is where government's going wrong, or
Well, it's much easier to sell negative stories about data than positive stories about data.
Yeah,
right?
100%. But that's the kind of
a different
stuff.
Conversation about media. Right?
Oh god, yeah, we're not going to get into that. Don't worry. But that's, to me, the kind of stories that we should be hearing, because it is positive stories about what the government's doing that people would never know. And I'm already impressed. Like, just to know that the whole point of government is to keep people feeling, we're in good hands, we're safe, and that would be one that we'd be able to go, hey, look, within 2 weeks we know.
Yeah, this was very real.
Yeah,
this was very real. I mean, all of us felt it in our pockets, right?
Right. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, JobKeeper was built in 6 weeks, guys. Right.
Yeah, which is just
That's
insane
crazy,
as well.
Yeah.
And how have attitudes changed on working in government, Em? Because a few years ago, if you'd have said, hey, come do this really cool role in data and government, people might be like, well, what are you on about? Have you seen attitudes change in the industry?
Definitely, yeah. I think actually what you guys have been doing is like a bit of a spearhead to all of it, like, or trickle down effect. Like, they've seen that you can be doing really advanced stuff in data. It doesn't, like, it obviously takes time for government, but it doesn't have to take like 10 years to do something. It can actually be like expedited if you've got the right people in place and stuff like that. So definitely, and I can see a lot of agencies are trying to like almost like tack on to that sort of movement as well now, which is good.
And also understanding that those people in your positions across the agencies, which I know you're on the chair, the board of all the different agencies for data, is having the right people in those roles who can sell upwards.
Yeah.
You know, you're not just a data person, you're a salesperson for the data.
Well, you're a champion, right?
Yeah.
I think you're a person that bridges the theory with something that translates it into something that strikes relevance with a strategic intent, right?
Exactly.
And I think that translation is the key point of difference that I think the current leaders in data analytics need to have, because otherwise they'll be just forever pigeonholed as, you know, support act.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You answer our questions.
Yeah. We'll tell you what to do.
Exactly.
And they're basically limited to being an order taker.
Yeah.
And you know, and I keep saying to our guys, right, we are not order takers, right? We are, you know, at least trusted advisors, and sometimes coaches, right? Because our function is actually to elevate the business's ability to use data as well, right? Because for me, you know, I don't want our guys to cut data and send reports and do simple stuff. You know, I think what good looks like is the business is actually elevating their landscape of data capabilities, and therefore the conversations get elevated as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And for me, that's really exciting because, you know, data is going to be it's going to be a common skill set for anyone, right?
God, yeah.
In the business, right? In 10 years time, right? It's like, as I said, it's going to be like Excel spreadsheets, right?
Yeah, everyone's going to be using them. Yeah.
You can't kill them.
You can't kill them. Do you know what? Speaking of Excel, because
So
a lot
true.
of our stuff is still on Excel. And Simon, our MD, the other week said to me, and then Linda in our accounts team saying, "Oh, there are not any other things we can put this into other than Excel and all that." Linda was like, "To be honest, it's still just for what we need. It just works,
Fit for purpose, right?
you know.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
why move?"
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's just take a quick break from that. Let's go and see what the general public knows about data while we're getting into things. So
Good luck on that.
Is it
Yeah.
the general public from New Zealand?
this
again?
is.
Oh.
So we're very lucky that
Gen Pop, Vox
yeah.
Populi.
Well, Emily went home for 8 weeks, and we needed to
Yeah.
record a whole bunch of new ones of these. So it's actually Emily's family answering these questions,
Actually, shouldn't tell people
which
that.
is
It's
pretty fun.
embarrassing.
Today's question is, what is a data journalist? So I think we've got 4, maybe 5 people answering this one. How many do we think know what a data journalist is?
I don't know, not many.
It's not going to be, is it, for that
No,
one? We had
no.
one yesterday. Get the
Data
question
journalists,
right.
that's actually quite
Well, I mean, I
specific.
don't even know if I know what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
So, you know,
Please
it's one of those
explain,
things.
Emily.
Well, let's find
Let's
out.
let my family explain, shall we?
Let's let the family explain first. All right, here we go.
What is a data journalist?
Somebody that publicises information that is presented by data analysts.
Someone who collects and writes about data.
Somebody that writes up about data analysts and what they do and what's going on in the industry.
Someone who writes about data futures.
Okay, so we had 4. What
Wow.
do we think? Apart from them all sounding really bored.
Yeah. I had to really incentivize them
Yeah.
to do this.
I bet. What the first one was okay. I felt, you know, we got a few like but then it tailed off a bit, didn't it?
I don't think any of them are correct, and I don't even know the answer to it, but I think they're just touching on an aspect of what the definition
So
is.
Emily, what is a data journalist?
Don't ask me that. I
Okay.
said to you, I don't know. I don't
Come
know.
on, you must know.
I don't. I think it's probably more your side, Joel. I'll throw it back to you.
God, okay. A data journalist for me is someone who uses data to tell a story, and when they write that story in an article format, they utilize the data, whether it be in graphs or in tables, to tell the story. So that would be like a written data journalist. So it's very visual, but also writing.
So storyteller.
But, and this is a weird one, you can also use data in a physical sense. You can tell a physical story. Like I've seen a data journalist before do like an data installation, you know, like at conferences.
Science
or,
fair.
Yeah, science fair where, you know, it's like an actual physical.
Or like holograms.
Yeah. You know, it's like, yeah. One of them ones. That's my definition. Storyteller, are we just going to go with that? Storyteller?
I think
data?
storyteller, and I think for me, storytelling is still the aspect that is very, very mission critical.
Yeah.
To this
It comes up
capability.
every podcast. Key skill.
You know, it really separates the good from the great.
Yeah.
And is the one that really allows the specialist teams to click and connect with the actual internal clients and consumers of data. Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, without that skill, always a fail. Yeah,
I would agree with that 100%. And do you think it's a skill that every person in data needs?
No, I don't think so. I mean, as I said, you know, it is a team sport. You've got specialists, right? Everybody plays to their positions. Yeah. You know, we've got a bunch of client account managers, or CAMs as we call them, and they are the guys that, you know, that are the translators. Yeah. But then we've got a whole cadre of business analysts, and for me, the business analysts are the key storytellers.
For sure. That makes sense.
They are the ones who internalize the requirements, but also are able to communicate the outcomes. Yeah. And it's that to and fro that I think, you know, is quite critical. Yeah. And look, and I think for me, that path is one of the paths that we use to actually migrate business people into the data. It's like a bit of a vortex, of talent for us.
It's still happening in a way as well.
Yeah,
for us,
and I think it's very natural and it's an entry point.
Oh, God, yeah. Always helps. Yeah, we find that PMs, BAs, marketing people, they're the three kind of easiest transitions across. I'm really keen to talk about retention because you manage a team of 800.
Yeah.
And we're in the toughest candidate market we've ever been in. We've kind of talked a bit about attraction already.
Yeah.
How have you been finding it from a general perspective, keeping your team? What kind of turnover do you have at the moment?
What kind of churn are you guys observing in the market right now?
The average data person now stays in a role for 2 years.
Yeah.
So it used to be closer to 3.
Yeah.
So that means that last quarter, for example, 11% of the data market moved roles. That's in 3
one
months.
quarter.
In 1 quarter, yeah.
So it's 40% in 1 year.
44% across the year, yeah.
Wow.
So
we're running at about 7.
Oh wow, okay, that's really good.
That's so
Per annum.
good.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Percent or people?
Percent.
Okay, cool. Just checking. Okay, so in the grand scheme of things, still a fair few. Now it's small in terms of percentage.
It's definitely above average for the broader organization, but lower to what I'm used to in consulting, right? Because definitely, 20-25% was the norm. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are the typical stories that people are saying when they are moving on? It's always
look,
good
I
to
think
hear.
I think it's definitely the reward structures because especially. As you guys know, there's the flex point after about 5 years, 6 years. People are at the threshold, right? And I think somebody can swoop in, offer them a big chunk increase because they're basically placing a bet on them, yeah?
Exactly.
To say, well, okay, you're not worth it that now,
but
right?
You will be.
But I'll give you so much money, you'll stay with me for 3 years and I'll get my ROI out of you, yeah?
That makes sense.
So I think for me, there is a clear pressure point there, yeah, because sort of you invested in those guys, you've trained them and they like the job, but then when something comes to you with a life-changing offer, well, you'll be hard pressed to say no, right? It's hard, right?
No, of course,
and I get it, right? So I think there's that challenge. Obviously now, as we're discussing at the beginning, right? Lots of you guys in the office here, we are finding it very difficult to bring people back into the office, right? And I think, and when I speak to my consulting, colleagues, it's the same thing with the consulting companies, right? Basically, they're very relaxed, right? They're allowing people to work from home. So I think there's been definitely a behavioral shift, in the last 2 years in expectations. And it's funny because we had a very flexible work arrangement situation set up, which was seen as a differentiator. Now,
not anymore.
Not anymore, right? Not anymore. It's just the norm now, right?
Yeah. So
and
do you
it's
have
challenging.
a set structure that's the same for everyone? Is that how it works, or it's more flexible?
Or in regards to working from home?
Yeah, hybrid models and.
No, it's individualized and I've got the latitude to make decisions as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we are very respectful of how people want to work. I think I'm happy for people to work from home. I've got no issues with that, but I'm very precise and upfront saying, look, when we're having group sessions or training sessions, I expect you to be in the office.
Yeah, sure.
Because they don't work remotely very well.
No, I agree with that as well. We say that as well.
Yeah, if you cannot accept that, then I don't think you're being respectful of this whole contract thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a two-way street, give and
Right?
take again, give and take. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and look, there's remote roles for people who want to be fully remote, but it's
but
not,
at the same time, you have to come in, and I think that it's a bit of an existential issue because, and we had deep conversations around it. Number one, like, how do you preserve culture in an organization? If you all work from home, what is culture, right? What's the cultural fabric? What are the cultural norms? How do you describe them? How do you create them? And most importantly, how do you imprint them on new hires, right? Like, imagine graduates coming in, right? So we hire, a couple of hundred graduates every year, right, across our organization. And they enter the organization and they're working from home.
Yeah.
How do they, what's the deal, right? How do they relate to people? How do they build the network? How do they know how to relate?
Yeah.
How do they build political skills, communication skills, networking skills? All those things are not the skills that you learn at university. Those are the skills that you pick up throughout your career.
Sure.
How do you do that now?
Do you think it's stunted some of? So I'm going to split
It has
up.
definitely stunted.
Yeah. So
I think,
those
like,
who are coming
imagine
back in
if
now-
you're a graduate that started 2 years ago.
Yeah. Are you struggling to get them to come in almost as well? Because they're so used to their bubble at home, and
I think there's an element of that, but I think they've missed out.
yeah, they have. Yeah.
They've missed out because it's that interpersonal skills,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, okay, you can, thank God it's video conferencing, not just telephone conferencing, right?
Right. You get a little bit. It's not the same though.
At least you get
It's
some
not the
visual
same.
cues, right?
Yeah.
But the face is not the whole body, right? So you don't get the full effect of the nonverbals, right? And and the informal conversations that you have in the office, right? The ability to seek help. Yeah, you can jab at people and you can have chats, right? That's all cool. But it's different. Yeah. And maybe it's okay for some people. I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe I'm showing my age here
Yeah,
again.
maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Talk to Gen X.
Do you know what?
Sorry.
It's
Not
those.
Gen Z. I'm Gen X, for God's sake. We are the forgotten generation.
You are, aren't you? Yeah. You even forgot yourself. What about maybe those who's had 6 months in the office and then they went off into COVID, and I think they were really affected from what I saw as well, because they were just starting to get going in
And
the
then they got
industry,
cut off,
and then
right?
they got cut off. But anyway, we can't fix that. So obviously you're doing a lot of hiring as well. I would love to talk about interviewing. It's an art. There's different ways of doing it. What's the worst interview experience that you've ever had? Maybe it was you. Maybe you stuffed one up, What should people avoid if they come into interview with Marek?
Waffling.
Yeah.
Or just, I guess, trying to create a false impression. I think people see through that these days, right? Like, because, unless you can substantiate your stories, people will see through that. Not answering the question, which again comes back to waffling, for me. And also, I guess what really bugs me if someone comes through so prepared that they don't allow the personality to come through.
Got you. Too scripted.
Yeah, because you're not just hiring the database of knowledge. You're hiring a person, And I think the interview process needs to address what you know, but also who you are. Yeah. And if I can't pick into who you are, then my subconscious will have questions. Yeah.
Makes sense. And then who, it must be a nice bit of promotion for this person, the best colleague that you've ever worked with, and why? You're going to be getting phone calls afterwards saying, I can't believe you didn't say me, Marek.
Nah, look, look, I think I'm going to talk about, I think there's one boss that I had was Andrew Clark in Accenture, long time ago. Yeah. And I think he was a guy who I really respected because he was very quick. Yeah. His brain was very quick. Yeah. And I like that, right? Because we could have really fast conversations. Yeah. And there was no explanations needed. It was just like, points were made, and he got them, he was responding very quickly, and we just move on, right? He had a very strategic headspace as well, yeah? So I think when we talked about, client situations or strategies or how we're going to pitch stuff, it was a very efficient process.
Yeah. Nice.
And I like that,
Yeah.
I like that, right? Because I think that was something that that really sort of created a bit of a role model for me in regards to, okay, this is
how you get things done.
Yeah, like quickly and create very quick insights as well. Yeah, it can work against you because then some of my 360 reviews came back to me saying Marek doesn't really like. He's very impatient with people that are they're a bit slow.
Fair enough. But you know what? If you've got that relationship with the right person,
for me there.
Yeah. But you can't be like that with everyone, right? You were like that with him, and that's how it worked there. So as long as you weren't necessarily like that with everybody, then
exactly. I think you need to adjust your style, right? And I think that's another lesson there, right? That not one style is going to be universal, right? In regards to how you relate. Yeah.
Exactly. Marek, unfortunately,
moving right along.
Moving right. We've got to be careful with you today. We are coming to the end. We're nearly at an hour, which flies by. I wouldn't mind hitting a couple of key questions that we usually ask as well, if that's all right. First things first, books that you've read or maybe things that you've done for learning. What would you be able to suggest to people that they might want to read or?
Yeah, I'm actually not a large reader of non-fiction books in this discipline. Yeah. I'm a news junkie.
Okay.
Yeah? So I subscribe, to lots of feeds, right? Which then, these days it's wonderful, right? Because they just feed you stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, for me, much more current than books. I think books are not as current, unfortunately, right?
Fair.
But fiction-wise, I'm a big sort of sci-fi sort of person since immemorial days.
Any particular?
Look, everything. Yeah, I've got a very large library, but I think the key thing that really resonates with this space is the whole sort of cyberpunk space, right? So Neil Stephenson, William Gibson, those guys are actually quite visionary. Yeah, the stuff they've written 20, 30 years ago it's very scary because it's very real now.
Yeah.
So if you read Snow Crash or Diamond Age or Neuromancer, those novels, right, they're still sort of a bit far-fetched on the edges, but you can see so many elements that are becoming very central to our lives right now. And some companies, Meta, are betting their futures on some of those visions. So it's not for everyone, but for me, having that genre and using that as basically an escape. Exposed me to many things earlier on, that are very relevant in regards to what we're trying to build right now and the sort of the environment that we're operating right now.
I love that because everyone who's come on this podcast has always used a non-fiction book. In our office, I'd say the majority of readers in here are non-fiction. I don't read much non-fiction, so it's nice to hear from someone who also doesn't. I'm a fiction reader. I use reading as an escape like you, but it can still kind of come into real life as well. So, good suggestion. All right, so we're pretty much there. We always like to give the opportunity at the end of the podcast. Obviously, you're going to be doing some hiring, I'm sure. Why should people come and work for you? What's so great about working there? It's your 2-minute sales pitch at the end, in case anyone's still listening.
I'll give 1 minute to Emily. Look, interesting work. Huge amounts of data, leading tool sets, very large use cases that run into hundreds of millions and billions of dollars with direct impact on the community.
That's very succinct. I love it. Anything to add, Emily? You've got 1.5 minutes left.
Well, everything I've already said, obviously.
Of course, yes.
So we'll take that into account. I was going to say before, but you guys kept chatting.
Sorry, Emily.
I'm joking. I feel like you come with a lot of relationships and you're very good at building relationships. So for someone who perhaps is maybe the back person in the room and wants to work on that, you'd be someone great to learn from.
Oh, thank you.
That's a good point there. Very
there
good. All right, Marek. Well, look, we obviously haven't covered every question. We never do.
No, fail.
No, it's not fail. No. It's impossible.
So
to
prepared
get
as
through all
well.
of them. I know. So I'll give you like one last opportunity. Did we miss a story that you're like, I have to tell this story on the podcast today, or did we hit enough that you're comfortable?
I liked your question here when you had the funniest presentation where the audience didn't just get it.
Boom, let's do it. Last question for today.
So, and it's a very short story, right? But a very simple one. We're doing a project in Taiwan, and it was for, I think, 7-Eleven. It was a retail client. And we're doing a whole reinvention in regards to how we're going to help them grow. And it was a very ironic question because Taiwan and 7-Eleven has the highest penetration of convenience stores in the world, more than Japan. And if you go to Japan, there's a convenience store on every corner.
Yeah. They're everywhere.
Taiwan is worse. Taiwan is worse. There's actually sometimes 2 7-Elevens on 2 opposite corners of a cross intersection. So it's like, how do you grow that? Yeah. But anyway, that's besides the point. We came up with a strategy, and I was presenting to the board. Yeah. And obviously, I don't speak Mandarin. So I was presenting for 4 hours, and basically with full translation. Yeah. So I was saying a couple of sentences, and one of my colleagues was translating that into Mandarin, and I just wasn't sure if they got it. Look, I think they've implemented a lot of the stuff that we recommended, but as a presenter, it was very weird because
I can imagine.
You have no sense of connection with the audience, and for me, that was like, ooh,
they lose your personality.
They obviously. I mean, maybe they get some of my body language, but obviously, stuff that's coming out of my mouth is like, no.
Maybe the translator was like dogging you as well, like halfway.
I wouldn't know, right?
Yeah. Don't listen to
I should
this
have a
bit.
second translator. Yeah.
Exactly. Don't listen to this bit. This is boring. You won't like this.
So yeah, it was just weird. It was just weird.
Imagine. I've never had to do that. I don't think I'll ever will, but yeah.
It was just very, 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 it really stuck with me, right? I was there for 4 hours presenting to the board.
For 4 hours as well.
And I wasn't sure I was connecting. And as a presenter, that makes you feel very uncomfortable.
I can imagine by hour 2, you're just looking around the room.
Is it worth going for another 2 hours?
Really. Well, on that bombshell, Marek, thank you so much for coming on. I think there's loads in there that people can learn from you. So thank you again, Emily.
Thank you for having me, guys.
No worries.
Pleasure. In person as well, which is great.
They're always the best ones, the in person.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
so
I thought I'd grab myself here.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. That's everything for today, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, guys.